Good morning. It's good to be with you at City View Church. Welcome. This is one of our Devo Moments, and I'm Ed Chapman. I'm one of the pastors here on staff at City View Church, so thank you for joining us for this time. At this point in July, we are looking at enjoying the fruits of the end of COVID restrictions here in California, and coming off of them, we are saying goodbye to limits on the spacing, and we are looking at things such as being together in homes and groups and that sort of thing, and of course, the end of mask requirements. And I don't know that anybody was really very fond of these all along. I think we all shared that. And I speak on behalf of the bespectacled community that we are especially glad to see them go, because with these things on, you're always wanting to take them off at just the wrong moment when you should have the things on, and somebody is sure to point out to you that you need to wear the mask. Well, never one to let a good metaphor go unexploited. So what can we gain from the unmasking? There are two imageries in Scripture that I'd like to look at this morning. The first is seeing people full-faced. Seeing people full-faced. We have taken for granted how much we communicate with our facial expressions. We value the value of making the most of smiling with your eyes. You've had to make that work, don't you? And you have to let people know, hey, I'm really smiling at you and I'm in a good mood. But at the same time, you're kind of like getting into their space a little bit by looking them too directly in the eye. So you have to figure out how to do that in a very sociable and socially acceptable way. Sometimes for people, it feels invasive, so you have to back off. Well, guess what? Smiling is back, folks, and I hope that you are learning to appreciate that. This is kind of a phenomenon you might call if we look for this in Scripture, being face to face with someone. Where do we see this in Scripture? Well, one thing that came to my mind, and maybe it came to yours as well, is the whole idea of Moses talking to God face to face. In the book of Exodus, as the Hebrew nation began its wanderings in the desert, we know initially Moses would regularly go up to Sinai and speak to God face to face. And you wonder what that's like, because we know that the extreme of that, if someone was to really look God in the face, that was going to be an intense and something that no human being could master. But there is a way that Moses was able to do that. And so he would regularly go up to Mount Sinai and speak with God face to face. Well, as they set out from that place, he really couldn't take the mountain with him, could he? And so he had to figure some way to make this a portable experience. So that was what he set up as being he created the tent of meeting. The tent of meeting, as we read in Exodus 33, we read it this way. Now Moses used to take a tent and pitch it outside the camp, some distance away, and calling it the tent of meeting. The Lord would speak to Moses face to face, as one speaks to a friend. That's a pretty intense and, I think, insightful way of describing that face-to-face experience, as one speaks to a friend. What is that experience? It speaks as if there's a sense of comfort, acceptance. There's a sense of being able to share and to be vulnerable and transparent. So this is one way that when we talk about the value of taking off the masks, is to have that kind of face-to-face speaking to God as a friend. Can we grow in our appreciation for this phenomenon of simply being fully in the presence of another person as one speaks to a friend? The second is seeing God full-faced. So we see that in Scripture as well. Certainly we do see that description in the story with Moses, but it also introduces the idea of being known by God. Communication is, after all, a two-way street. It's a reciprocal dynamic. So here's what we read about this in 1 Corinthians 13. Paul says there, when I was a child, I talked as a child, I thought as a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. I do believe that speaks about our relationship with God as well. And so that idea of masks, of removing our masks, is something that also has a sense of when we speak with God, of going to Him without masks on. Now, I don't know about you, but when I would leave the house during COVID, there was my checklist. Did I have everything on me? Did I have my keys? Did I have my wallet? Did I have my cell phone? And did I have my face mask? That was just kind of essential. It is interesting that here we are a couple weeks out of needing to do that, and I still have that in the back of my mind. Do I have my face mask with me? And so that's kind of built in, ingrained to my psyche and the way I think in terms of always kind of having to need that mask. Well, I wonder if we've carried that with us. And I do think that we might kind of identify this phase of our life as being post-COVID, that perhaps we have picked up some habits and ways of interacting with others that we really don't realize that we've done. In other words, we have distanced ourselves from others in unnecessary and unexpected, and perhaps sometimes even unknown and unrevealed ways. So that idea of, have we also taken on with that sort of a sense of distancing ourselves from God? Perhaps we have been looking at the events of the last year. Maybe there have been disappointments, maybe there have been difficulties and trials. There are things that have happened in life that we haven't really taken before the Lord or allowed His grace and His sense of what is going on with those experiences in our life to have really influenced us. So as we take off our masks, we want to become more fully known. And do we wish to become more fully known by God as well? Did masking lead us to unintended consequence of being comfortable with hiding? If you think about that, if that is true for you, then I would encourage you to literally, as it were, and figuratively, more importantly, take off that mask in regard to not only your relationship with others and enjoying that sense of that full interaction of engaging in a smile, being intentional about smiling, that sort of thing, as well as our relationship with God and taking off our mask before Him so that we can come face to face with the living God. In our next Devo Moment, we are going to look at another phenomenon that was brought on by COVID, and that is social distancing. So I look forward to seeing you next time in 2 weeks for our next Devo Moment. Thanks for joining us.